In the dusty heart of a California night, Clara Hayes stood stranded, her truck dead, and her ranch miles away. A stranger emerged from the shadows, Jacob Walsh, a cowboy with a battered hat and a mysterious calm. He offered to fix her engine, but when masked men struck her ranch under moonlight, his lightning-fast moves revealed he was no ordinary drifter. Who was this man, and what secrets hid behind his quiet eyes? Welcome to A Story That Lingers. Before we continue, let us know in the comments, where are you watching? If these stories resonate with you, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel, because tomorrow we'll have another special story for you. The California night hummed with the faint buzz of a gas station's neon sign, its pink and green glow flickering across the cracked asphalt. Clara Hayes, 32, stood beside her battered pickup, the hood propped open, steam rising like a ghost from the engine. She gripped a wrench, her calloused hands steady, but her jaw tight, frustration simmering as the truck hissed in defeat. 10 miles from her ranch, Red Haven with a dead phone and coyotes yipping in the distance, she was stranded. The air smelled of dust and gasoline, the kind of night where trouble felt closer than help. A low chuckle cut through the silence. Looks like you need a miracle or a mechanic. Clara spun, nearly dropping the wrench, her heart kicking up. A man sat astride a black horse, its coat gleaming under the faint moonlight. He was tall, dust-covered, his battered hat pulled low over eyes that caught the neon like steel. His denim shirt, worn thin, blended with the dusk, making him look like he had ridden straight out of an old western. "Depends what you're offering," Clara said, her voice sharp, one hand still on the wrench. He gave a half-smile, slow and unhurried. "Left my miracles at the last ghost town, but I'm decent with engines." She studied him, the sun sinking fast, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. No cars passed. The road was empty, save for the coyotes' distant howls. She had no choice. "Fine. Take a look." He dismounted, his boots crunching softly on gravel, and leaned over the engine with a quiet confidence that made her pause. He moved like he'd done this 100 times. No rush, no swagger. "Name's Jacob," he said, wiping a hose with a rag from his saddlebag. "Just Jacob?" she asked, arms crossed, her dark hair falling loose from its braid. "That's what I go by." His voice was low, steady, but it held something guarded, like a door half closed. Clara nodded, unsure if that was enough. 20 minutes later, he straightened, wiping grease on his jeans. "Radiator's busted. Needs a tow." Clara sighed, her breath visible in the cooling air. "My ranch is 10 miles west. Got a trailer there. Help me out, I'll feed you." Jacob tipped his hat, a small gesture that felt older than the hills. "Deal." Red Haven Ranch sat nestled in a valley, its wooden sign, "Red Haven 1972, creaking softly in the evening breeze. The porch lights glowed warm against the twilight, horses stirring in the pasture beyond. Clara and Jacob hitched her truck to his horse, an odd sight that drew a reluctant smile from her. She walked beside him, her boots kicking up dust, until he insisted she ride. "It's getting cold," he said, his voice firm but kind. She climbed up behind him, awkward, trying not to lean too close, but the night air was sharp and his warmth was hard to ignore. They reached the ranch as stars began to prick the sky, unhitching the truck in silence. Clara watched him work, his hands steady, his focus absolute. "You any good with tools?" she asked, eyeing the sagging barn door and a fence post leaning like a drunk. He glanced at the damage. "Depends on the job." She nodded, her voice practical but curious. "Got a leaky roof and a busted gate. Stay a few days, you've got work." Inside her small kitchen, the smell of beef stew and cornbread filled the air. Clara set a plate before him, watching as he ate, grateful, not greedy, his movements precise. "You ever settle anywhere?" she asked, sipping water to hide her scrutiny. Jacob shook his head, his fork pausing. "Not for a long time. running from something. His eyes met hers, steady but shadowed. Running toward peace. The words landed heavy like stones in a still pond. Clara's father had said something similar once before the bank took half his dreams. She didn't press, but the silence between them grew thick. She offered the bunkhouse a small room beside the barn with a cot and a lamp. He accepted, stepping into the moonlight with a quiet thanks. Clara locked the door behind him, her mind turning. He was kind but closed off like a book with pages glued shut. A drifter cowboy, she thought, one of the old kind, but something about his steady hands and guarded eyes made her wonder. Just before dawn, a crash shattered the quiet, sharp and jarring, like glass breaking on stone. Horses screamed in the barn, their hooves pounding against stall doors. Clara bolted upright, heart racing, and grabbed the rifle by her bedside. She threw on boots, her flannel shirt half-buttoned, and ran into the cold. The barn loomed dark, its door swinging off one hinge. Shadows moved inside, three figures, one already prying at a stall. Her prize mare Starlight whinnied in panic. Clara raised the rifle, hands trembling when Jacob appeared from the side, moving like lightning. He grabbed the first intruder by the collar, slamming him against a post with a thud that echoed. The second swung a crowbar. Jacob dodged, drove a fist into the man's ribs, and swept his legs in one fluid motion. The third took one look and bolted into the dark. Clara reached him breathless, her rifle still raised. "You okay?" Jacob nodded, checking the stalls, his voice calm but hard. "Better question for them." The two men groaned on the ground, one clutching his side. Clara stared stunned. "Who are you?" He soothed Starlight with a low whistle, his hands steady. "Just Jacob." But those moves weren't cowboy, they were trained precise, like a soldier or worse. Clara's gut twisted. She knelt, searching the intruder's pockets, and found a crumpled map of her ranch Starlight stall, marked with a red X. "They were after her," she whispered. Jacob's jaw tightened. Someone sent them. Clara's blood ran cold. This wasn't random. Someone wanted her ranch broken. Morning light spilled over Red Haven, painting the pasture gold. Jacob worked on the barn door, his sleeves rolled, hammer-striking nails with a rhythm that felt like it belonged to the land. Clara watched from the porch, her paperwork forgotten, a pencil tucked behind her ear. She'd seen ranch hands curse and fumble, but Jacob moved like he had nothing to prove, his hands calloused but precise. She approached him at the trough, where he splashed water on his face, the droplets catching the sun. "Last night you've done that before," she said, her voice low. He dried his hands on a rag, meeting her gaze. "Maybe." "You move like someone trained," she pressed, stepping closer. "Not some drifter who fixes fences." He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You trust me enough to let me stay." Clara's jaw tightened. "That was before you broke ribs in the dark like some ex-soldier." His voice softened, but it carried weight. "Sometimes people lose things, Clara, and they don't want to talk about it." A crack in his tone, barely there, stopped her cold. She remembered her father's voice, worn thin by years of fighting the bank. She nodded, relenting. "You've earned a few more nights." Jacob tipped his hat, his eyes lingering on her a moment longer. "That's all I need." That afternoon, Clara climbed to the barn loft, searching for spare blankets. Her foot caught on a dusty box hidden behind a tangle of ropes. It was heavy, its metal corners rusted, a latch stiff with age. She pried it open, coughing, as dust filled the air. Inside were papers, titles, deeds, legal letters, and an envelope labeled J.D. Walsh. Her heart raced. J.D. Walsh was no stranger. He was a legend, a millionaire who'd owned half the state's land and oil before vanishing years ago after his fiancee's plane crash. Rumors swirled, grief, scandal, a staged disappearance. She powered up her old laptop, fingers trembling, and Googled his name. A younger man stared back, clean-shaven in a suit worth more than her truck. But those eyes, Jacob's eyes. She found him in the pasture, the papers clutched tight. "You lied to me." Jacob exhaled, slow and heavy. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. You're J.D. Walsh. You let me think you were a nobody." Her voice shook, betrayal sharp. He stepped closer, his voice soft. "I walked away because it broke me, Clara. I wanted to be someone new." She shook her head, tears burning. "I trusted you." His eyes held hers, raw and honest. "You still can." But the hurt was too fresh. She turned, climbed into her spare truck, and drove to town, needing space to breathe. In a roadside inn, Clara sat on a creaky bed, a newspaper crumpled beside her. The headline screamed, "Victor Crane expands land grab." Victor, her ex, was buying up the valley, pressuring families, foreclosing ranches. Red Haven was next. She remembered his slick smile, his tailored shirts, the way he'd always wanted her land when they dated years ago. The break in the map, it was him. She'd walked away from the one man who could stop him. Her father's voice echoed, "Land's only as good as the hands that hold it." She drove back at dawn, the sky pink and gold. Jacob was in the barn brushing a colt, his movement steady as ever. "I read the news," she said, her voice firm but tired. He nodded. "Crane's moving fast." She stepped closer, the paper still in her hand. "I need you, J.D. Walsh, not the cowboy, the man who built an empire." His eyes softened, a flicker of something new. "You've got me." They sat at her kitchen table, papers spread out. Jacob pulled legal files from his saddlebag marked Crane Holdings LLC. "I've got resources. We'll file an injunction, stall him." Clara swallowed, her voice low. "He'll fight dirty." Jacob's jaw tightened, his eyes hard. "So will we." She felt it then, a spark, not just trust, but something deeper, like the first rain after a drought. That night, truck engines growled in the distance, headlights slicing through the dark. Clara's stomach dropped. Jacob handed her a walkie-talkie, his voice calm. "Call Sheriff Bennett. Stay close." Three men jumped from the trucks, led by Victor Crane, his tailored shirt out of place in the dust. His voice was cold, mocking. "Sell Clara or lose it all." Jacob stepped into view, shotgun lowered but ready. "Back off, Crane." Victor sneered, his eyes glinting. "You're out of your league, cowboy." Clara aimed her rifle, her hands steady now. "Not tonight." She fired a warning shot into the dirt. Victor lunged, but sirens wailed. Sheriff Laura Bennett's cruisers tore down the road, red and blue lights flashing. Deputies cuffed Victor and his men, finding unregistered weapons in their truck. Jacob took a gash to the temple, blood trickling, but he stood firm. Clara ran to him, breathless. "You okay?" He nodded, a faint smile. "Close enough." She touched his arm, her fingers lingering, and felt the weight of what they'd just survived. A year later, Red Haven bloomed under a soft spring sun, wildflowers dotting the pasture. Clara, now Mrs. Walsh, stood on the porch cradling their daughter Maggie, whose tiny hands clutched her mother's shirt. The ranch was now Red Haven Rise, a nonprofit equine therapy center for veterans and troubled kids. Laughter echoed from the barn, where community volunteers worked alongside Jacob, guiding a shy teen with a skittish mare. Victor's empire had crumbled in court, his land grabs halted by the injunction Jacob funded. Clara watched Jacob carve a new sign for the ranch, "Red Haven Rise, where we heal." His hands, once calloused from building an empire, now built something quieter, truer. "Morning, Mrs. Walsh," he called, his smile warm and unguarded. She grinned, rocking Maggie. "You're late, Mr. Walsh." He crossed the field, kissed her forehead, and peeked at their daughter. "She's out cold like her mom after a long day." Clara laughed, her heart full. They'd fought for this, not with money, but with love, with purpose. The valley was theirs again, and so was their future. If this story moved, you share it. Love rebuilds what the world breaks. Subscribe to a story that lingers for more tales of second chances.